The Prince with the Golden Hand, Part 2. Slavic Folktale. At these words and at that which followed, the king and queen were amazed, for the strange child, guided as it were by an invisible hand, rushed into the garden, and in spite of the cold, for it was not yet daylight, bathed in the early dew. When the sun had risen, he threw himself down near a little wood on the fine sand, rubbed and rolled himself in it, and returned home, no longer a child but a youth. It was pleasant to the king to see his son thrive in this way, and indeed the young prince was the handsomest in the whole land. He grew from hour to hour. At the end of a month he could wield a sword, in 2 months he rode on horseback, in 3 months he had grown a beautiful mustache of pure gold. Then he put on a helmet, and presenting himself before the king and queen, said, "My much honored parents, your son asks your blessing. I am no longer a child, and now go to seek my brothers. In order to find them I will, if necessary, go to the furthest ends of the world. Ah, do not venture, stay rather with us, dear son, you are still too young to be exposed to the risks of such an undertaking." "Adventures have no terrors for me," replied the young hero, "I trust in God. Why should I for a moment hesitate to face these dangers? Whatever destiny has in store for us will happen, whatever we may do to try to prevent it." So they agreed to let him go. Weeping they bade him farewell, blessing him and the road he was to travel. A pleasant tale is soon told, but events do not pass so quickly. The young prince crossed deep rivers and climbed high mountains, till he came to a dark forest. In the distance he saw a cottage supported on a cock's foot, and standing in the midst of a field full of poppies. As he made his ways towards it he was suddenly seized by an overpowering longing to sleep, but he urged on his horse, and breaking off the poppy heads as he galloped through the field, came up close to the house. Then he called out, "Little cot, turn around, on thy foot turn thou free. To the forest set thy back, let thy door be wide to me." The cottage turned round with a great creaking noise, the door facing the prince. He entered, and found an old woman with thin white hair and a face covered with wrinkles, truly frightful to look upon. She was sitting at a table, her head resting on her hands, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, lost in deep thought. Near her were 2 beautiful girls, their complexions like lilies and roses, and in every way sweet to the eye. "Ah, how do you do, prince with mustache of gold, hero with the golden fist?" said old Yaga. "What has brought you here?" Having told her the object of his journey, she replied, "Your elder brothers perished on the mountain that touches the clouds, while in search of the princess with the golden hair, who was carried off by Vikar, the hurricane." "And how is this thief Vikar to be got at?" asked the prince. "Ah, my dear child, he would swallow you like a fly. It is now 100 years since I went outside this cottage, for fear Vikar should seize me and carry me off to his palace near the sky. I am not afraid of his carrying me off, I am not handsome enough for that, and he will not swallow me either, for my golden hand can smash anything. Then if you are not afraid, my dove, I will help you to the best of my power, but give me your word of honor that you will bring me some of the water of youth, for it restores even to the most aged the beauty and freshness of youth. I give you my word of honor that I will bring you some. This then is what you must do. I will give you a pincushion for a guide, this you throw in front of you, and follow whithersoever it goes. It will lead you to the mountain that touches the clouds, and which is guarded in Vikar's absence by his father and mother, the northern blast and the south wind. On no account lose sight of the pincushion. If attacked by the father, the northern blast, and suddenly seized with cold, then put on this heat-giving hood. If overpowered by burning heat of the south wind, then drink from this cooling flagon. Thus by means of the pincushion, the hood, and the flagon, you will reach the top of the mountain where the princess with the golden hair is imprisoned. Deal with Vikar as you will, only remember to bring me some of the water of youth." Our young hero took the heat-giving hood, the cooling flagon, and the pincushion, and, after bidding farewell to old Yaga and her 2 pretty daughters, mounted his steed and rode off, following the pincushion, which rolled before him at a great rate. Now a beautiful story is soon told, but the events of which it consists do not in real life take place so rapidly. When the prince had traveled through 2 kingdoms, he came to a land in which lay a very beautiful valley that stretched into the far distance, and above it towered the mountain that touches the sky. The summit was so high above the earth you might almost fancy it reached the moon. The prince dismounted, left his horse to graze, and having crossed himself began to follow the pincushion up steep and rocky paths. When he had got halfway there the north wind began to blow, and the cold was so intense that the wood of the trees split up and the breath froze. He felt chilled to the heart, but he quickly put on the heat-giving hood, and cried, "O heat-giving hood, see I fly now to thee. Lend me quickly thine aid. O hasten to warm ere the cold has killed me. With thee I am not afraid." The northern blast blew with redoubled fury, but to no purpose, for the prince was so hot that he streamed with perspiration, and indeed was obliged to unbutton his coat and fan himself. Here the pincushion stopped upon a small snow-covered mound. The prince cleared away the snow, beneath which lay the frozen bodies of two young men, and he knew them to be those of his lost brothers. Having knelt beside them and prayed, he turned to follow the pincushion, which had already started, and was rolling ever higher and higher. On reaching the top of the mountain he saw a silver palace supported on a caucasus foot, and at one of the windows, shining in the sun as rays, a head of golden hair which could belong to no one but the princess. Suddenly a hot wind began to blow from the south, and the heat became so intense that leaves withered and dropped from the trees, the grass dried up, and large cracks appeared in several places of the earth's surface. Thirst, heat, and weariness began to tell upon the young prince, so he took the cooling flagon from his pocket and cried, "Flagon, bring me quick relief from this parching heat. In thy draught I have belief. Coolness it will meet." After drinking deeply he felt stronger than ever, and so continued to ascend. Not only was he relieved from the great heat, but was even obliged to button up his coat to keep himself warm. The pincushion still led the way, ever climbing higher and higher, while the prince followed close behind. After crossing the region of clouds they came to the topmost peak of the mountain. Here the prince came close to the palace, which can only be likened to a dream of perfect beauty. It was supported on a caucasus foot, and was built entirely of silver, except for its steel gates and roof of solid gold. Before the entrance was a deep precipice over which none but the birds could pass. As the prince gazed upon the splendid building the princess leaned out of one of the windows, and seeing him light shone from her sparkling eyes, her lovely hair floated in the wind, and the scent of her sweet breath filled the air. The prince sprang forward and cried out, "Silver palace, O turn, on thy foot turn thou free. To the steep rocks thy back, but thy door's wide to me." At these words it revolved creaking, the doorway facing the prince. As he entered it returned to its original position. The prince went through the palace till he came to a room bright as the sun itself, and the walls, floor, and ceiling of which consisted of mirrors. He was filled with wonder, for instead of one princess he saw 12, all equally beautiful, with the same graceful movements and golden hair, but 11 were only reflections of the one real princess. She gave a cry of joy on seeing him, and running to meet him, said, "Ah, noble sir, you look like a delivering angel. Surely you bring me good news. From what family, city, or country have you come? Perhaps my dear father and mother sent you in search of me." "No one has sent me, I have come of my own free will to rescue you and restore you to your parents." To be continued.